Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another animation analysis video, and I don't know if you can hear the smile in my voice, but ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited, hyped out of my mind, frankly, for what we have on the screen. If you are not aware, in the data download for Global NJP that just happened tonight, we had the addition of a boss, Cell Max from Dragon Ball Super Hero. Of course, the movie is currently releasing over here in the States as we speak, so people are starting to finally see the movie all over the world. Spoilers ahead, I suppose, if you have not seen the movie yet. When you go see the movie, come back and watch this video. And I know that this might seem like a silly animation analysis video to make, considering that it's literally an intro and an essay that are maybe about like 10 seconds each. But ladies and gentlemen, I am not only so hyped for Superhero just in general, I am so hyped for this to finally come to Dokkan. I have been craving for superhero stuff in Dokkan for a fat minute now that I had to make a video on it. I literally was sitting here like, yeah, why not, right? So we're going to take a look at these boss essay and intro animations. This is also going to be interesting because obviously, keep in mind, this is not a Dokkan Fest unit. This is not an unfeatured unit or anything like that. This is a boss unit for an upcoming event on Global NJP. So it's also going to be very interesting from that perspective to sort of take a look at what we're going to be working with here for your boy Cell Max and the quality of these animations. By the way, I did want to note I am using Dokkan World's upload of these, even though I do have my own on the Dokkan Assets channel. And the reason for that is because he has it all compiled into one video. And not only that, I uploaded mine from the Dokkan Wiki website, which kind of compiles the assets. And it also was like a work in progress when I uploaded it. Even though it was still, you know, the full animation, there were still like some things missing from it, like the enemy sprite and stuff like that. So I figured we would just use Dokkan World's video because obviously I can do it all in one go, and then it will have everything that we need in it. Of course, I will leave a link to Dokkan World's video in the comment section below. And thank you to my boy. He literally has told me before, yeah, if you need to use any of my videos for this type of thing, go for it. So thank you, brother, for that as well. Let's go ahead and hop into it here, though. So this was a really cool addition, something that I definitely did not expect to be added tonight for sure. So we have the intro animation here. By the way, of course, we're going to watch through it one time, and then we're going to... Ooh, okay. We're going to then, of course, take it in the slow-mo. We then have his super attack here. Thankfully, Mr. World was nice enough to put these on the sidebars, so we don't have to have them actually block the animation here. So really cool, right? Definitely a very cool animation. Obviously, it is trying to mimic that CG style as close to it as it can, right? For the intro animation specifically, I think they do a bang-up job of it, if I do say so myself. The intro animation is fantastic for this guy. Starting off here, we have the water exploding out of the capsule that Cell Max has been stored in for all this time. By the way, again, spoilers. I know I said that in the beginning, but now we're really getting into spoiler territory here. The water effects look fantastic, I must say. I think that they absolutely nailed the water sort of exploding out from the metal that's already sort of, you know, broken in some places, right? They nailed this animation. The water looks so nice, and I think they did a pretty good job of capturing that sort of 3D CGI effect. One thing that I was really interesting in seeing how they did the superhero animations is if they were going to keep the CG, because for the free-to-play Gohan, his animation was actually styled in CG very slightly, because it is a, you know, very far away attack. And obviously the card arts that we've seen, the Piccolo and Pan story assets, as well as Gohan himself, have all been styled in the sort of CGI style. So I really wanted to see if Dokkan would keep with that and how these animations would end up looking, and it seems like they've done a pretty good job keeping that consistent. So the water effects look very nice. We have the ring that is wrapped around the window that Cell Max is in. I did not even notice that upon first viewing. That is super cool, if I do say so myself. Flying forward towards the camera, which is very nice. And that's the transition. Oh, that's so cool. I love it when Dokkan does stuff like this. Okay, so then we transition over to the water pouring out. And of course, as you can see in the background here, ooh, what's that? What's that emerging from the back there? You can see Cell Max's head sort of come up over the water that is pouring off of him. I will say the water does look a little bit weird. I guess it's more of like a representation of him. Or it's being around him, rather, because obviously it would be more like around his horns. It wouldn't be like this weird bubble. But maybe that's because it was contained in the space and it's sort of rising down and then dissipating, right? So it's not necessarily around Cell Max. Kind of just interesting. So we have the water splash down, which, by the way, literally perfect. Like, absolutely, they nailed the water physics here, which is very interesting that they look that good. But yeah. Absolutely nailed it. Spot on for sure. We have the water pour over and oh my gosh, this is such a sick shot, dude. Holy cow, look at this shot of your boy. That is so cool. I love the way that they did this little introduction here. It is very, very interesting. I will say the one thing that is a bit of a shame is the transition here is so abrupt, right? You have this like really cool establishing shot with Cell Max entering the frame. And then immediately it just cuts to him climbing out of the container. I don't know what they would have done otherwise. Maybe had some transition animation, maybe just faded to black. But it is a little bit weird that it is quite literally just that sharp of a cut, right? Nonetheless, though, even though I'm not the biggest fan of that, this section is quite interesting, right? So before we get to the part where he begins to glow, the part where he basically is standing up, right, is really interesting to me for a couple of reasons. For one, this section absolutely, I think, is one of the most obvious examples of them trying to mimic the CG style here, right? You can tell that that's what they're going for here, right? They're going for these 3D models sort of look, right? Which I think that they get pretty well, to be honest. However, the interesting thing about this to me is that the assets move in a very weird way. Like, they kind of expand and deform in very strange ways, right? Like, I think one thing, if you keep a look at Cell's chest, right? Look at it in full motion. Keep an eye on his chest, especially how this pecs sort of morphs into shape, right? It's a very weird look. Then keep your eye on his muscle on this side, right? As it sort of morphs into place, right? Very weird. It is a lot better, I think, than them doing like just fading in and out between frames. But it is very weird to see that strange muscle growth or like adjustment to the way that he's moving. I don't know. It just looks a little bit strange to me. Even in full motion when I saw that, I was a little bit off-put by that for sure. But moving on past that, it's cool that they bothered to include the detail of the water still being on Cell Max. This was also interesting that for him, like, powering up and then having the glowing spots, right? He literally just stands there, and it is quite literally just one frame, right? It's literally just one frame going, oh! Very goofy. I don't necessarily dislike that. I think that that helps emphasize how obviously crazy this is supposed to be. And of course, we got to keep in mind, this is a boss animation, not even an unfeatured unit or anything like that. So of course, the animations are going to be a little bit, not lacking, but they're going to be a little bit less hype or a little bit less consistent, I guess you would say, right? But this shot is very cool. Obviously, we have Cell Max's spots glow. This is cool. I did not even see this impact frame. That's sick. Super cool. We have these nice effects sort of flying around as he's screaming, which is super nice, right? I think this shot looks really good. They also nailed the glowing effect on him as well. Super, super well. I really, really like this. It is a bit of a shame in the actual animation. He doesn't actually scream. It is just some like background noise basically of the objects in the room breaking in the water there. I hope that they eventually add a voice line to him if this does get incorporated into a card somehow. I would assume if they're doing this for just a story event, they're probably going to reuse this for some kind of card in the future. But I digress. Still looks pretty cool. Also, interesting that his head sort of expands here just for the last moment of this. This is obviously when he is sort of like beginning to look to the side, but it's interesting that they just have like his head just sort of change positions. That is a little bit jarring. I didn't even really notice that until I was looking at it through the frame by frame, so maybe it's not as bad. But I think it definitely helps emphasize the sort of grotesque look of Cell Max for sure. Okay, so moving on now to the super attack. This is quite interesting to me. So we have Cell Max run forward. Before I even talk about the rest of this animation, right, I do have to say, I feel like this looks a lot more like it's in the style of a Dokkan animation rather than in the style of the movie. I think that the intro animation absolutely nailed the sort of aesthetic look, obviously the CGI look of the movie, but I think that this feels a lot more like a Dokkan Super Attack. I also think that they're still trying to capture that CGI look here. I don't think it looks bad by any stretch of the imagination, excuse me, but I think they definitely got that more 3D look a lot better in the intro animation. So we have Cell Max run forward and turn around and begin to fly at the camera. He opens his mouth actually, and this is pretty cool. I didn't even notice this. He actually readies up to run. He actually like presses his leg down a little bit to then shoot off, which is a very nice attention to detail. We do have this very quick change to this frame of Cell Max here, and unfortunately this is quite literally just a PNG moving forward quickly, and I believe tilting a little bit too, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it is such a quick scene that I think most people probably won't even notice it, right? And I gotta say, even though this is a little bit stinky, the transition is super cool because it transitions to a zoom in of his eye that's glowing, which looks really nice, and they actually mask this pretty well. Obviously, you can see because they're zooming into this asset here, it looks super low quality. But when we go one more frame, you can now see that this asset is really high quality, which means to me that they actually thought this through and that they obviously knew that they were going to zoom in on this section, and so they made a specific asset for it, which I think is really nice and looks really good. So obviously, the zoom into his eye and the fade to white, definitely a way better way of doing it than cutting away. We, of course, have the card art, which I have to say, by the way, because there's nowhere else where I'd be able to comment on this. This card art, I like the art itself. The effects are really ugly. Maybe it's just me, but it is very overbearing on the card effects for sure. Moving on, though, it's interesting this angle we get here. So, obviously, we have the man's fist curled up next to the camera, which is quite the interesting angle, if I do say so myself. We have a yellow flash to sort of represent him punching forward, which is interesting that they did it this way and didn't just have the whole screen flash white, right? Then we, of course, have his fist collide with the Cybermen here before punching away. I do have to give them credit for sure. Not only is this lightning effect and all these lighting effects with the key here very, very cool, I also really like the fact that this has quite a bit of recoil on it. You can see, obviously, as he throws the punch forward, his arm moves a little bit there. And then, of course, as it goes frame by frame, right, you can see the arm sort of contorting, right, into the, you know, proper shape from obviously recoiling from the punch a little bit, which is really cool. So we have a quick cut to Cell squatting up. This shot, I think, looks extremely funny to me personally. But I don't think this shot looks bad. It looks very well animated with him getting ready to squat. I think they cut it in a pretty good place to obviously emphasize that he's about to go nuts. I don't know how I feel about this pose. I mean, I guess this is a pose that he takes in the movie, but I think it's just the framing and the angle that this is at is very strange to me. Like, I would think that this would be better looking from a front angle, personally, rather than this interesting side one, right? Nonetheless, though, it doesn't look too bad. And of course, this animation is actually really cool. So, of course, we have Cell Max begin to fly up. And not only do they obviously blur him because, of course, he's moving quickly, which is really neat, they actually have a animation of him stretching his body out, because you can see the tail isn't curled the same way it was. Now it's extended to sort of represent that he's actually moving up in the air, which I think is really, really cool. Definitely a nice attention to detail on that one. And does his tail actually move a little bit? It kind of looks like it moves position there, yeah. I don't know if that's just them twisting the PNG or if they actually animated the tail. Obviously, it's hard to tell with it being so blurry, right? So then, of course, we have the enemy fly back. This scene also looks very goofy out of context, with him not there and then just, hello! But yeah, so we have him fly into frame here, which is pretty cool. Obviously, the sort of blur effect still taking place, and then we have him sort of phase back into existence, which I think looks pretty good. He literally is wearing boots. And then a little bit of an animation of him looking down at the enemy, which is cool because they could have just had him still facing forward, right? It looks very, very nice. A little bit of minimal movement on him too, which is nice to, again, sort of emphasize that lifelike feel of the animation. And this is interesting because you cut from, like, looking at the scene from... You're looking at it from the front, I guess you would say, right? Where you're looking at Cell Max behind the Cybermen, to them cutting to, I guess this would be the side, right? With the punch here. Very interesting choice of angles in this animation, if I do say so myself, right? We have the punch go through, and I gotta say, this is a very interesting way to do a punch, right? The sprite moves forward a tiny bit from the punch, and then they have the follow-through as just a quick blur frame, right? With this little air effect here, too. And then the follow-through from Cell Max's fist. I don't know how I feel about that. I thought that that looked a little bit janky, and I don't know. Let me give you just the quick, like, in normal speed, right? It feels a little bit jank, right? Like, when I saw that for the first time, I was like, I don't know how I feel about it, because it looks, like, fine, but it looks like he almost, like, stutters in the punch, or he hesitates, I guess. I don't know. Just a little bit strange to my eyes, for sure. So then, of course, we have this very nice shot where we cut over to Cell Max's face. And, of course, right, it is a pretty close-up shot, so the assets look pretty good. We have him open his mouth and cut towards the camera. This is a little bit of a jump, but Dokkan animations do this a lot when they're sort of going from one angle to another. They sort of mask it by having you focused on not the transition, right? Because obviously they transition to this sort of kind of kitty corner shot, and you have him move his arms back here and charge up this ki, which this section looks very nice. And again, I think they nailed the glowing spots as well as the ki effect in his mouth. Spot on, if I do say so myself. It looks fantastic. I love these little purple lines as well that are sort of emphasizing the ki charging in his mouth, right? And then, of course, we have the ki actually fly forward here with a flash of purplish white and the ki beam come out of his mouth. Again, they really nailed it with the spots. I think that helps emphasize this whole animation for sure. But this looks pretty good. Obviously, the camera shake, I think, also helps this feel a little bit more impactful too. The beam looks nice, and we actually have a pretty interesting transition where we're obviously, like, sort of next to the beam, and then it transitions into it actually flying forward, right? That flash sort of helps, and I don't even know if that was intentional on their part, but it sort of helps act as a proxy transition between this shot and then it flying towards the enemy, right? Once it hits the enemy, we have a white flash and obviously this purple explosion, which looks pretty cool. I think the smoke also looks very nice there, and of course, just the smoke at the end. So that is Cell Max's animations. This is quite impressive, I must say, for a boss card, right? I think that's really what blows me away about this guy the most, is that this is all for a unit that you are probably going to interact with like 5, 10 times, and then you're never going to interact with again. That's what makes me think that they're going to use these animations for something more in the future, whether this be the SSR SA of a upcoming Cell Max card, or the intro remains the same for a Cell Max. Maybe they make this into a free-to-play Cell Max, something like that, right? I definitely think that they're not going to waste these animations, because especially the intro is super high quality, and again, it looks very close to the movie's animations. There's, of course, parts where you can tell, right, that it's Dokkan with quick cuts and whatnot, but it still looks good. It still looks extremely good. I am honestly very impressed for this being a boss card, and I cannot wait to see what else Superhero brings us in Dokkan for sure. But of course, let me know in the comment section below what you guys thought of this animation, if you're excited for Cell Max coming to Dokkan, and of course, if you've seen the movie and if you've enjoyed the movie. I know myself, I'm actually going to see it the day that this is uploaded, so I am going to have a blast seeing it in the theater. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.